everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me. It is Nate. Nate, I don't know about England, but it is finally fall here. It stopped being balls out hot. It is definitely spooky pumpkin time weather. Very exciting. Very nice to not want to die anymore when I step outside. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, so for us, I had read somewhere that the start of meteorological autumn in the United Kingdom is 1 September, and it was hot on 31 August, and it was not hot at all on 1 September. It was like a fucking flip switched. A correction. It was like a fucking switch flipped. I am very tired this morning. That said, so yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, it's gray at times. You don't get a ton of sunlight, but we're getting actual like autumn weather. And which means that it's just in time for fox mating season, which means we're going to hear some death rattles because when foxes mate, it sounds like someone is ritually sacrificing a cat. Yeah. Like they make the most horrific noises, and no one told me this. So I moved here, and I legitimately thought someone had like their dog had been murdered, like their small dog had been murdered by like a fucking wolf or something. I was woken up at 4 a.m. by this horrible howling. And turns out, no, it's normal. Just foxes, just doing their fox thing, and they're everywhere. Like, when I ride my bike home from the studio at night, I'll typically see at least one, if not as many as like 3 or 4 foxes just like out, just doing their thing in the city. It's the weirdest thing, but like, they're as common here as raccoons are in New York City.
Yeah, that's wild that you just have foxes roaming around. This must be why they had the fox hunts. Now we need to do What Does the Fox Say, and it's just their fucking sounds.
Yeah, exactly. But that being said, I think that it's because there's a lot of food for them in urban environments, and like they're pretty crafty. Like they sneak around. Like they're very much like, it's weird. They're like cats. It's the best way to describe it. They're like cat dogs, and they're very good at just kind of like lurking around and finding food and just eating rats and eating trash and stuff like that. And so yeah, they're the real deal. I think I saw 1 fox, maybe 2 foxes my entire life in America before I moved here. I saw one in Indiana in like a big greenbelt area in my hometown. And then I saw one when I was like 4 in really rural Washington state, like in the middle of, like, my parents' friends lived on this island, this very not developed island off like the coast of the mainland, and we were visiting them, and yeah, I saw a fox on their front porch. But that was it. And then now, like, so it was a weird experience. The first time I saw one here, I was walking down the street with Riley from Trash Future, and I was like, dude, what the fuck? There's a fox. He's just like, yes, so? I was like, what the fuck is a fox doing in the middle of the city? And turns out it's normal here. So, yeah. England is where up is down and left is right. Strangest place.
But at least your weather is on time, unlike ours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, they saw the hottest temperature ever recorded here, and that day sucked. Like, it fucking sucked. Don't get me wrong. Like, in a place with no AC and when most buildings have relatively low ceilings, it was 38 Celsius, I think. So, like, 105-ish. That 104, 105-ish, that sucked. That was like not normal. And you don't want to, like, I wouldn't want to experience 105 in America without air conditioning, and I certainly wouldn't want to experience it here. I mean, obviously, like, I dealt with it in Afghanistan, but like all bets are off in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and just going back to foxes real quick, the best way that I've heard a fox described is cat software on top of dog hardware.
Yes, no, for sure, man. They it's the weirdest thing. They are cat dogs. And I'm sure there's like problems, like people who like raise livestock, like poultry and stuff, are probably hate foxes because I'm sure they're crafty, like eating chickens and such. Like hence the whole parable, the fox in the hen house. But yeah, they're everywhere, and it's just very weird to like just kind of have that be normal. Although in Korea we had what they called vampire deer. They had deer with very large like incisors. They're just weird looking. And so you'd see them out jumping around like when we'd be out in training areas. And so like if you can get used to the idea of deer with huge fangs, then you can get used to the idea of foxes in the city.
Oh God, I just looked up a picture of it and I don't want that. They're like, they're so adorable, but also look like they will fuck up my jugular.
Yeah, exactly. Like they don't attack humans or anything, but they look like if they wanted to, they could just end you.
Just tear out your jugular.
Just
damn nature, you are fucking
by
scary.
A deer. Yeah. All right, cool. But at the same time, though, we're not concerned as much with nature right now as we're concerned with a different kind of getting back to nature in America, which is to say getting back to our roots, i.e. the Civil War.
Oh, yeah. Brother against brother once again. Donald Trump has said that if this impeachment were to go forward, that there would be a brand new civil war on the soil of America. I mean, look, obviously Donald Trump doesn't know anything about history. He doesn't know what the Civil War was about. He probably would be one of those, it's about states' rights, and the states wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. And then if you ever tried to push them on it, they'd just kind of like sink into the ground and disappear from you and never bring it up again. But, Civil War has been a thing that's been on the tongue of conservatives for a couple of years, ever since Donald Trump was elected. Noted veteran and friend of the show, Kurt Schlichter, who has does he have you blocked too?
He does not. He's had me muted though for a while, and so he never responds when I own him. But he will threaten people who approvingly quote tweet my owns with legal action. So that's where we're at right now.
It's a curious relationship. He blocked me a long time ago when I accused him of writing jerk off fanfic about Mattis, which he absolutely did.
It was funny because a friend of mine made fun of him and was just like, you'd make excuses for William Calley if you thought it was going to let you own the Democrats, and his response was like, that's beneath you. That comparison is beneath you. Like, and he was like, "You're right. There was a difference between you and William Calley. William Calley saw combat, and Kurt Schlichter immediately blocked him."
Yeah,
fucking amazing.
Kurt Schlichter. I don't want to dive too far into him because we have before, but he is one of my favorite fixtures on the right because he is so buffoonish in his own way. Like his bio on his own website says that he has coveted jump wings, which is fucking so does Nate.
Hey, I got them as a 20-year-old cadet. There was a 17-year-old in my fucking airborne school class who graduated with me. Come on, man.
He's a veteran of OEF, which means he went to Kosovo.
Yeah, exactly.
That counts, guys. That counts. Technically, that's OEF, and it's
My favorite thing about Kurt Schlichter is that he has. I don't know if he has a CIB, but he has a combat patch from when his unit deployed to Saudi Arabia and then to Kuwait, I think. His unit was deactivated in 1993, so effectively he has a combat patch that hasn't been an active unit since before most soldiers in today's army were born. And like you said, his OEF combat deployment was when OEF fell under the purview, when Kosovo fell under the purview of OEF. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, Kosovo's it's a forward deployment. I know folks who were in Kosovo in 98 who were we were definitely getting shot at, but I don't think Kurt Schlichter was getting shot at in 2006 in Kosovo. And there were people who were getting shot at in 2006 who were in the U.S. Army in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, which he managed to never go to, despite the fact that he was I'm going to lose my mind, the deputy brigade commander of an infantry brigade in California that actually did deploy to combat. He stayed on Rudy.
Incredible. Yeah, look, I'm not a person to shit on somebody's military career. Just because it's not like I have an illustrious military career myself, but I'm also upfront about it. It's I'm public affairs. I was never, who a combat dude. I'm never, I have my opinions, but I understand that my opinions are shit, just like every other soldier's. But Kurt Schlichter has managed to turn his into a personality, which if you listen to our most recent bonus episode, is a thing we yell about a lot. About veterans and personalities.
I think it's fair to point out to somebody like him that, it's one thing to be it's one thing to demand that veterans respect each other's service if you're also willing to respect other veterans. But the thing about it is with Schlichter is that he, in pursuit of his weird Civil War fucking, argument that he wants to make, will be the first to shit on soldiers and officers and whomever if they don't agree with his political points. My friend Matt Gallagher, who's been on the show, who's an author, who's just come out with his second book, or correction, not even his second book, his second novel. Matt's published a memoir previously. He would razz Matt because he was like, "Oh, there's an officer just like this in every brigade. I made mine my coffee bitch. He'll never go on patrol because he's not man enough to take the fight to the enemy because he's a weak Democrat." And it's Matt was a platoon leader in combat. Absolutely was he was in Iraq during the surge, leading men in a fucking striker platoon. He was in combat. It's shut the fuck up. What are you talking about? And it's one of those things where the man can't take it, but he can dish it out. And so I try to avoid digging on people for service record stuff. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I haven't done it in the past, but I do think it's ultimately self-defeating because, I mean, what that sets you up for is this argument in which you can trump somebody by being more badass. And so, like, a Jocko Willink or a Carl Higbie can jump in and be like, oh, yeah, well, I was a Navy SEAL, fuck you. And that doesn't really mean anything. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's worth it. But I do think that for somebody like Kurt Schlichter, whose trade is basically allowing civilian ignorance of the military to be like a buffer in which he can purport himself to be this hua badass when we all know that he hasn't done shit in his military career. And he depends on civilians who call him the colonel and like defend him because they think he's a badass and he's tough. It's patently hilarious and self-defeating. And so I think that, yeah, bringing it back to the discussion of the Civil War, people like Kurt Schlichter aren't really trying to appeal to veterans or to people who know anything about the military. What they're trying to do is appeal to civilians who valorize the military, but particularly valorize them in a distinctly right-wing way. And so he wants to say, like, oh, if the libs get too lib, then there's going to be a civil war and me and all the brave troops are going to be on my side, which you and I know is fucking absurd, both because of the difference between the military now and the military of 1861, and also the difference between the South and the North, both today and in 1861. Like, it's insane.
And the Daily Beast article that we're gonna link in here, it says, if Trump's rage brings a civil war, where will the military stand? And it makes some interesting. It's a very long read, but it makes some interesting points about the cult of personality that Trump has. That there are plenty of fucking probably Q supporters and outright Nazis in the military, but there always have been. Like, that's not new. Maybe there's slightly more of that shit now. But it talks about how Trump has a huge following and a lot of support in the military, and like I'm not sure what they think that means. Like, if that's a polling question and you look at these numbers and you're just like, well, this number is bigger than the other number, so therefore, this is something that we have to worry about. But the thing is, last time I was on any kind of training, just hanging out with around soldiers, like soldiers I didn't know. When I went to Carson in Colorado, just hanging out with soldiers during breaks and talking, politics and talking Trump and talking North Korea. A lot of them were just like, well, I'm not in, I don't really like his tweeting and whatnot, but I support him because of, I support him because of these things. He's letting us take the gloves off in Afghanistan, whatever the fuck that meant. We dropped a big bomb, and then we're just like, yeah, they said we killed a bunch of people, so cool, we did it. High five us. So when it comes to like support of Trump, I don't think that it's like the trash can man in the stand running around yelling "My life for you" at Donald Trump and throwing themselves onto a bonfire for him. I think it's just a lot of troops being like, hell yeah, we get to finally take a fight to the enemy. But if they, if you really kind of press them, it's like, is this really the guy that you want to throw yourself behind? This man who is like constantly screaming and filling his diaper online, a man who is like very obviously done something with some foreign governments to like, this is what you want. I have a feeling that a lot of them would kind of pull away from that. Like, there's always going to be that tacit support of Trump because I'm a Republican or I'm a conservative or I don't like, the damn socialist Democrats. But like, would most of them throw themselves in front of the president? Like, maybe some of them who felt like, duty bound would, but I feel like a lot of them would be like, I don't really want to take a fucking bullet for that guy.
Well, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that, there's an extent to which people say, okay, do these people support Trump? Like, is there a very online, very vocal contingent of, veterans and active duty military who support Trump? Like, sure, yeah. But also, that doesn't mean that they're willing to give up their lives and livelihoods for him. I mean, that's the big thing, right? Is that most veterans, people will talk a lot of fucking shit online, but like, unless you went and fought in Syria or in fucking, in northern Iraq, unless you joined Rojava or the PKK, fuck you talking about? You're not going to do shit. And you're not going to do shit. Or flip side, unless you went and joined a fucking military contractor and were a mercenary, like, I just don't believe that these people who are like, I'm going to bear arms for Donald Trump are actually going to do it. The ones who would do that shit are actually doing it. They're doing it either for private military companies or they're doing it for people fighting against ISIS, like, because they're from that area and they fucking hate ISIS. I just don't see a large number of those folks being willing to actually go out and do it again, to pick up a weapon and do it again. And the ones who are in the military, I mean, the only way that there could be a civil war is if the Democrats somehow made the paycheck stop coming on the 1st and the 15th of the month.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing, right? Like,
but even that, like we've had government shutdowns, and like we all did our fucking jobs still, and we let the government sort itself out. Like we managed, like the government workers and the military all managed to go without paychecks for a while. It sucked. It was terrible. It was really shitty. It's a shitty move on either the left or the right side to shut the government down over some budgeting shit and let people who require, because I mean, look, it's a job. We're not out there doing it because it's for funsies all the time. So we need the money. So I mean, we've had that happen, and nobody revolted, nobody broke in and stole tanks and drove across and blew up Congress or blew up the White House or anything, because like I honestly, Nate, I don't think Americans have it in them anymore to do a revolution, like a violent uprising. Like look at right now, you got Hong Kong protesters. You got the protests in Iraq. Like you have a lot of people who are really rising up and like getting shot, like gunned down by security forces, and they still show up every day. Like, no, fuck it, we're here. We're mad. And we're going to protest, and we're going to wave our fingers. I don't know. I just think like like as a whole, like I feel like the left definitely loves to protest. We love to go out and yell at people. That is what we do. However, the right likes to show up and wave their guns around, but then they go home. And I don't really think that they have. I just don't think that we have another American Revolution or another Civil War in us as a society. I feel like we're all too like. I just want to pay attention to Mike. I just want to look at my phone. I just want to play this game and not fucking deal with this. Like I don't know what it would take for this supposed civil war and uprising. I feel like if we impeached Donald Trump and forced him out of office, there would probably be an uptick in crazed mass shooters for 6 months. And then it would die back off, and we'd all be, I don't know, Pelosi as president. I don't fucking know. Whoever it would be, who would also be garbage, would be in charge.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just don't think that this is something to be taken seriously until there is a much more significant development, in the sense that people will talk tough, but like when stuff actually starts happening, that's when you'll know left or right whether or not people are going to actually mobilize. And I think that this is the kind of rhetoric that these people like to traffic in. They like to talk about like apocalyptically, like if you don't do what I want, then we're going to murder you. And I mean, Schlichter, like you've talked about, for example, Schlichter loves to talk about his fantasy civil war where he gets to shoot American soldiers for some reason. Because he's shooting the government.
He literally wrote an entire thing about how the quote civil war would go, and it was in which like the conservatives would be doing guerrilla warfare and killing American soldiers because gun regulations were put. Like Kurt Schlichter honestly believes. Maybe I don't know if he believes it. Maybe it's just like his thing to make his dollars. But he puts out a thing on which if there is any kind of gun control, anything, even if you did what Nate and I say, in which you have a bolt action or a rifle or a pump action shotgun. Right, you get rid of all the other guns. You can have all the revolvers and bolt-action rifles that you want. Apparently, somehow, America is going to rise up and just grip their AR-15s and go fight for our Second Amendment. It's like, man, you bitches couldn't fight for like the other fucking 24 amendments. I don't know why you think that you guys are going to do it for this one. Fuck off. No, this is never going to happen. But he will like go on to the website that he writes for and like seriously write about murdering American soldiers because they might enforce the law. They might enforce the Constitution. And for every law and order cop or law and order person out there, law and order conservative who talks about how great the cops are, they will immediately shoot a cop in the face if a cop is just like, hey, you can't have that detachable 30-round magazine anymore, and also you have to give up that detachable 100-round drum. It's like, I will fucking murder you, officer, right now if you try to take that away from me. That is the switch to be flipped for a conservative. It's not taking away your rights of your Fourth Amendment rights. It's not people not getting proper representation when they get picked up and go to jail and they can't get bailed out because they don't have the money, so they have to sit in jail unaccused, without charges on them. and lose their job, lose their homes, all lose their family and shit like that. That's not what we rise up about. We rise up about a fucking gun. So all of this Civil War shit, I just don't buy it. I don't know what it would look like, but I know that it wouldn't happen in any way that anybody thinks it would. What we would have is we would probably have a couple of unhinged fucking Q supporters run into a couple crowded places and shoot the place up. We're gonna get more mass shootings, and like I don't want to downplay mass shootings or active shooters or anything like that, but that's really like the only. You're never gonna get these people to like organize against something like that. The only organization that exists anymore is the people on the left, and all they're doing is getting signatures, man. That's what we do. We get signatures and we do we change the brake lights, and then conservatives will just crank off on 4chan and then go on a shooting rampage, and then everything will just go back to normal.
Yeah, I mean it's dumb. It's absurd. I think that it's like, so living in the UK, you see a similar thing where people are trying to whip up rhetoric about Brexit, and there's obviously like a very small number of people who are actually willing to like go out toe to toe for this kind of stuff. They do exist and they're dangerous, but they're not indicative of the whole. And I think it's the same thing in the US that, I mean, if Trump gets impeached, the thing about it is with the military is that like, I think Trump is just kind of a troll. Like I don't want to sound like an asshole. I mean, obviously I was an officer, so like I'm going to sound condescending no matter how I phrase this, but I think in a way Trump plays to a kind of understanding of the government that is going to make people who enjoy watching senior figures get humiliated happy. Like if you're Joe and your life is constantly getting fucked up by an E7 or an E8 or an E9 or a first lieutenant or a captain, it's going to make you really happy to watch that captain get fucked up by his boss. You know what I mean? And so Donald Trump humiliating, bitching about generals and talking shit about people like John McCain, like that in a way is just sort of fulfilling that desire to watch your boss get dunked on. And so in a way, I think that it's understandable, but I feel as though it's pretty absurd that you would say, okay, I'm going to extrapolate polling support for Trump amongst veterans and active duty military and say, okay, I think that this is gonna this translates into the possibility of, I don't know, a potential support for something extremely illegal, something extremely unconstitutional. That just doesn't really strike me as likely. I mean, people will say it, but they won't. I don't know. They won't fucking do it. I mean, you think about the stuff that were supposedly the hard lines. I mean, stuff like the Tea Party only happened because the dark money was dumping into that shit. There's still committed ass racists, but I mean, that was Koch brothers and Fox News shit. Like that was the right wing establishment sort of churning up the outrage engine that they've never turned off since.
Yeah, for every conservative that waggles their finger about Soros money being dumped into the Democratic Party, like remember that anytime you see that, just remember that Turning Point USA, an organization that is meant to be to appeal to conservative libertarian college students, all their Facebook money for their ads, like $400,000 worth. Guess where that money comes from? Is
boomers. It comes from boomers and it goes to boomers. And
it goes directly, like they advertise to people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s because that's who's scared. And I'm not going to say that there aren't, chud ass conservative dork 20-year-olds out there. There certainly are. But for the most part, those people are very few and far between. And the only times you see them is when like the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post does these glowing things with like, I was called, a cracker and I was told to go fuck myself. And it's just so hard to be a conservative. So hard. Poor me. A bunch of fucking snowflakes.
Well, something else I'd point out too. This is a joke that I saw years ago, or maybe even weeks ago. I don't know. It's all the same. Time is flat to me now. Nothing exists in real time. That whenever you look at people like Greta Thunberg or people along those lines, young activists who are taking a left position, or at least like an anti-business, anti like unfettered capitalism position. Some of those people aren't necessarily left, but they're certainly not right wing either. Whenever you see young people, conservative media and the shit dicks like Brett Stevens and Maureen Dowds, as well as like the far more insane ones on the right, And yes, I'm saying Maureen Dowd and Brett Stevens are conservatives. Maureen Dowd might claim she's not, but she absolutely is. They all are. I mean, like that's the thing. Like uh, there's very few actual people on the left in opinion journalism in America. They always say, oh, surely she's being paid. Surely that's being funded by dark money. Surely that's, she's been trained, given media training. She's being delivered talking points because she's just the front for some shadow organization. And the reason why they say that is because that's what they do. There are no young conservative activists that aren't handled and fed that way. They just don't exist. I mean, they might exist in, like my high school, like fucking Carmel, Indiana, Carmel High School, where, kids whose parents are upper middle class, they impart their Republican fuck you got mine values on their kids. But in terms of the ones in national prominence, like the Charlie Kirks and the Jack Posevich and the I don't know, like I would say Candace Owens, but she's older. But you know what I mean, like the Republican teens kind of shit. That's all astroturfed and dark money. And so I think that talking about this stuff in the context of Trump support and in the context of like allegiance to Trump as opposed to allegiance to A, the Republican Party, and then in the case of the military, B, the people who pay your paychecks, I don't think that it's wise to take what they say at face value, because most people involved in propagating this stuff have a financial incentive. Some are crazy, some are insane, some are like the QAnon people, that, don't get me wrong, but most of them have a financial incentive, or they are parroting stuff that's being handed to them or fed to them or advertised to them by people with an extreme financial incentive. So I'm always wary of these supposed the poll results being indicative of any larger trend, because I mean, money can skew these things, and if there's any one thing the Republicans have a lot of and really love, it's money.
Look, and you can't really call yourself a soldier if you're not willing to back the Constitution, right? I mean, that's what we defend. We hold up our hands and we say that we'll defend the Constitution no matter what. So if there is a 26th constitutional amendment that bans the Second Amendment, guess what, bitch? You better be prepared to.
It's the fucking Constitution.
Yep.
You are supposed to enforce it.
Yep.
Like, yeah, like
you're gonna
shut the fuck up. Yeah, whatever.
And if you're a person, if you're if you want to be mad about that, you want to be angry about it, whatever. I don't give a fuck, but you better be prepared to defend it. And here's the thing.
And if you don't have to be in the military. You can quit and not get our fucking money from taxes anymore. How hard is that? Go be on the Bundy Ranch and jack off with a fucking car 15. I don't care. But don't pretend that there's some sacred constitutional value. You guys just love your fucking KFC nonstop eating fucking TV host who's got dementia. Like, you've invested your personality, you've invested all that makes you who you are in this guy, and you don't care about the politics involved. You don't really care about anything besides owning the libs, and so you're just going to go down with the ship. Like, good for you. Go down with the fucking ship. But, like, don't pretend that there's something coherent about this. And certainly don't pretend like there's something, innately constitutional about your concerns. You're just a racist who loves yelling at people.
Exactly. And go be that. That's fine. Go be the racist that likes to yell at people, but stop being in the military. But I mean, look, being being a racist who likes to yell at people is like a good chunk of the military as is. So maybe you have a home here. I just now see me and you. We don't want any part of it, so we're getting out too. And we'll have our own.
I mean, I've been out, and not only have I been out, but I've gone so far as to get so far out of the U.S. military and the sort of veteran identity that I legitimately don't even live in America anymore. However, I realize that not everybody is able to or willing to go that far. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the route you should take. I'm just saying that I think at the core of this discussion is we don't really know how people are going to react in these circumstances until the circumstances take place. But if you look at how the Civil War started, two things. Number one, there wasn't universal suffrage. The states individually voted to secede. They had aggressive conscription, and they had that long before the Civil War because men were conscripted to serve in slave patrols in the South. And the significant chunk, if not the I would say in many cases, the overwhelming majority of the South's economy depended on slavery, on chattel slavery, and that's how it happened. It's just the U.S., for better or worse, is way more federalized than it was in 1861. You just don't have a comparable situation. You absolutely don't. Most people who fought in the Civil War were conscripted.
Well, what
now,
this is...
Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that QAnon people and Bundy Ranch people are going to be able to fucking successfully lobby Arizona or Mississippi or fucking Louisiana or Texas to institute conscription to own the libs? Because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, what this comes down to is it's just like the people who glorified the Civil War or the World War II, glorified the Civil War. It's a bunch of dumbass dads who read giant tomes about Gettysburg and about, and we'll talk to you at length about like how General Lee was like actually a good man and didn't like slavery even though he owned slaves, and said that they should be whipped, and talk about master tacticians, and it's this like and here we're going to go back to that, the Civil War. We're going to go back to that. Like even reading Kurt Schlichter's like thing about like doing he was one of the scenes in his weird Civil War jerk off fantasy porn was about like attacking a striker brigade that was coming down a road with like sniper rifles. And I was just like, do you think that we do dismounted patrols outside of a striker at this point? Like when I was in Iraq, we didn't get out of our bulletproof vehicles. We let the guy with the 50 cal on top do the talking, and then we moved on. Like, why would we have a dismounted patrol that snipers could do anything with? Why are you not, like, none of this fucking makes sense. It's all just like some weird fantasy where you're just recreating the Civil War, except with, modern rifles. And it's like, instead of, horse-drawn carriages with these, armored carriages or whatever, now we're, it's a Stryker or it's a up armor Humvee. It's like, bitch, like, we have drones now, man. Like, how do you think that this is going to work? It's not going to work. And anyone that tries to like secede, like, here's the thing: it's not a civil war. What it is it would be a coup d'état. It would be a coup against the government, and just if that's what you want.
I think that would be incorrect because that presumes that there's enough people in a high enough level of power that they would overthrow the democratically elected government. I think it would be more like an insurgency, and if it did happen, and it wouldn't last very long. I mean, think about modern insurgencies in America. What were they? The best example I can come up with in recent memory is the kind of the two prongs of the abortion clinic serial bombings in the 90s and stuff like Timothy McVeigh. And that's basically it. And that shit got quashed pretty fast.
I mean, the Weathermen, maybe? I don't know much about
that. That was a lot longer ago.
Okay.
That was a lot long. I mean, the Weathermen, that, I mean, basically after the Brinks armored truck robbery in the early 80s, the Weather Underground were done for. Like, they weren't a serious organization anymore. So I would say in recent memory, the closest thing you can think of like an insurgency that was active in the United States that was, committing terrorist attacks, in pursuit of political goals, were like the militia movement, but really more so than anything else, the abortion clinic bombings.
I'm reminded, and also the Bundy Ranch standoff, which,
But I mean, those folks didn't go full Eric Rudolph though. They didn't take it that far.
They were.
I mean, you remember ready. Eric Rudolph, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, they were poised and they were ready. And I think what happened is the government was, the government standing out there with guns pointed back at them, and they're just like, "This is fucking dumb. Let's just go home." And who gives a fuck anymore? Because look, everybody remembers Waco, and that was not good for the ATF public affairs page. So, I feel like there are like these small insurgencies, and then you get this like, oh, we did it, we won because the government backed down. It's like, I don't think you understand that the government backed down because they didn't want to have to murder the shit out of you people for being really fucking stupid. Like, this isn't a like, oh, those wily Bundys, they got us and now they get to do tax evasion, because like the government is still like legally chasing after the Bundys for their shit. So this isn't some like, well, we, the end of the 80s movie where it's like, we did it, we saved the recreation complex, guys, we did it, we raised enough money. No, the government going to get theirs. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just one of those things where I look at this stuff and I think, I think we're giving way too much credence to these people in the absence of any real serious evidence that this is going to be more than like a fringe thing. In the sense that the Bundy Ranch didn't precipitate a larger uprising, in the sense that the Tea Party never metastasized into an actual insurgency, like with weapons, and in the sense that the QAnon people are just like a self-deluding fringe that, you know, go and scream at church services at midnight on Christmas, but don't actually like take the fight anywhere. Could they? Maybe, but I do, like you said earlier, if it happens, it's going to be like that guy who tried to attack the federal building and got just fucking no-scoped. Like, it's going to be that. It's going to be weird, kind of loner, isolated people who get radicalized by internet bullshit and then decide that they're going to, you know, go full Kekistan or whatever and then die.
You know, even
I don't think it's going to be bigger than that.
Even the like organized groups, like I don't know if you saw that goofy like Nazi Al Qaeda training video where they're all doing like push-ups in some guy's backyard with their shirts on.
But that was Proud Boys. But then you also have like the Identity Europa and like Patriot Front and people like that. Like those exist, but I mean,
but not violently. They're never gonna like those. Those are groups that will always say like we're prepared and we have our guns. And it's like, but you're never gonna do anything with them.
Well, the reason why they're never gonna do it is because if they do it, then the cops actually are there's gonna come a point where the cops can't glad hand them anymore.
Yeah.
And their ability to operates on the fact that the cops are sympathetic to them. In many cases, there's commingling membership. But the minute they start killing cops, the cops' loyalty to white nationalism is fucking profound, but their loyalty to other cops is even more profound.
Yep.
I mean, flat out.
You're not going to pull the trigger and kill a cop and then keep
the cops are going to be like, hell yeah, kill more cops. I love white power. Like, it's not going to happen. So yeah, so that's one of those things that it's always latent, it's always threatening, but it's never manifest because because they know that once it has first contact with reality, it's over. Yep.
Like and no matter, you know, even the shooters, like the lone wolf shooters that get radicalized by, you know, watching too much Fox News and Ben Shapiro and shit, and then go out and do this stuff, and then they, you know, get their names in the paper and they get, you know, cheered on. Then it dies off again. Like, I don't know. We haven't had a mass shooting in a while. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But you know, it's funny too. Is another thing that similarly never survives first contact with reality. Anything Jacob Wool says. And it's weird because he did it again. He did it again.
I love Jacob Wool because I'm not entirely convinced that this isn't some sort of elaborate like performance art, like some sort of like fucked up Andy Kaufman-esque thing that he's doing. So he recently, like, normally I don't talk about Jacob Wool because I don't give a fuck about him because he's basically a clown. But he involved the Marines, so now we have to, just so that we can make fun of the Marines. Jacob Wool got a 25-year-old ex-Marine to go to a press conference in Jacob Wool's mom's driveway, along with Jacob Wool's weird Better Call Saul-ass lawyer, and claimed that the Marine was after his time overseas, he came home and started working for a prostitution service and was solicited the services for Elizabeth Warren. And Elizabeth Warren apparently has very, very deep and disturbing and violent sexual needs. And somehow, some way, Jacob Wool figured that claiming that Elizabeth Warren, frail grandmother Elizabeth Warren, could be like flogged repeatedly, and instead of killing her, it makes her come, and somehow I'm not supposed to vote for that. Like, I don't know where the disconnect was. And like, I watched some of the press conference, and somebody was just like, well, I mean, you know, you're saying that it's bad that she's, you know, cheating on her husband, but like also in your in the paperwork that they have, they, you know, Elizabeth Warren specifically quote Elizabeth Warren, obviously air quotes here, that she's like, oh, my husband and I have an open marriage. Okay, cool. Hey, if they have an open marriage, that's none of my business. But somebody says, well, you know, Donald Trump cheated on his wife, and Jacob Wool was like, well, first off, I don't really believe that, but even if he did, you know, Donald Trump is so much of an alpha that he just has to have sex with multiple women constantly and without end. And that was, and I love watching these because like everybody shows up to these just to laugh at Jacob Wool at this point. And I don't know what his end game is. I think he's just like a fucking narcissist and just needs people to keep paying attention to him, because if people don't, then like if nobody showed up to these press conferences and every time he came out with something, because if you can remember, Wool also had got a guy to try and say that not Mattis, Mueller sexually assaulted a young man like a year ago or so during the whole Mueller report thing. And obviously everybody just kind of showed up and laughed at him for that. But it's like, I feel like if people just stopped showing up for his ridiculous claims, he would just like turn into a small puddle of salt water and just evaporate into the air. Like, cause that's the only, he's like some sort of like fucked up funhouse mirror that only exists if people are like, like he can only take corporeal form if somebody is actually looking into the mirror. So he has to figure out a way to make people always be looking into the mirror. And this is it. It's, finding some dipshit Marine who never went to combat. Like, I don't even like, podcast listeners, we don't give a fuck about stolen valor, but like my biggest complaint about stolen valor is like, do 20 minutes of research before you claim something, so that it's a little bit harder to figure out, because like they found this guy's Instagram like instantly, like like even like at the press conference itself, somebody was on their phone saying, "I've already found your Instagram. That scar you're showing us, you have a picture
from
of this
taking down a swing set."
Yeah, the scar you're trying to show us is right here, and he's just like, "No, that's not me." And it's like, you both have the same XXX tattoo on
your neck,
on the back of your neck, like from the movie Triple X. Like, this is it's again, it's just fucking cartoonish, and like I don't know why he's not in jail. Honestly, like this has got to be some sort of libel or slander or something. He's already like being arraigned on security for selling securities, false securities. But the thing is also, I don't understand why people like look at Jacob Wool and trust this at all. Like, he was apparently very successful at bilking people out of money for securities frauds. Why? He looks like a goddamned idiot. He looks like a fucking Ken doll who just constantly has a blank stare in his face. And if you like, he keeps posting all these Instagram photos like, "Oh, here I am in Minsk. Here I am in Istanbul, drinking my whiskey and smoking a cigar." It's like, it's the same fucking fence in your dad's backyard behind you in all of these pictures, dude. You are like, and again, that's what it's like. Either he is so stupid that he has to be reminded to breathe, or this is performance art. I mean, more than likely, he's just really, really stupid, but charismatic. I don't get
discount how dumb he is. I mean, if I remember reading some thread by a guy who worked at like some private equity or like huge hedge fund, that Jacob Wool had come in and basically made all these demands of him because he said like, this is his investment idea. But if you don't, sign this to me right away, like I'm going to go across the street because BlackRock already wants it or something like that. And they all knew. They're like, what the they're like, are you insane? He just seemed like a weird bullshit artist that was just like completely out of his mind. And so, I mean, maybe he needs help. I don't know. But I mean, as far as I understand, there's a warrant out for his arrest. He might be going to jail. But or like maybe he's got charges. I haven't heard. But what I do know is
he's got arraignment coming at the end of the month. So he was he like turned himself in and was released into his own custody. So it's like it's like the Fire Festival guy. Like, after, I don't know if you watched it, either of the
I didn't, but I've seen a lot of screen grabs on Twitter.
Yeah, so the Fire Festival guy, like, he did the Fire Festival, it fell through. He was obviously like, fraud, doing frauding, doing fraud, whatever. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, man, you're done here. You need to keep a low profile because you're gonna go to jail. And he kept doing crimes. He kept doing fraud, and they're like, fucking stop doing this. You're not making anything better for you. He's like, no, man, I got another idea. I'm gonna convince these people to do this, that, and the other thing. And like, this guy isn't like super charismatic, but it's like, how did you get like, I can't remember who the celebrity that they got on for it was like, how do you convince people like this? Like, I can't convince people. I gotta like fucking beg people to give me $3 a month on Patreon, and you just come up here just like, I'm gonna do a music festival. I'm not gonna give you any details on it. I'm not gonna show you any plans. Just give me a shitload of money, and then somebody does. Like, I don't know what line of business I need to be in for that, but I'm not in it, and I don't know how to get to it. So if anybody could tell us, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like yeah, that thought had crossed my mind that when you can exude a certain level of like richness and self-assuredness that comes from being rich, people just believe you at face value. And I mean, obviously, like nowadays, there's so many stories of just, people getting grifted. But with Jacob Wool, I think the thing that's so funny is that, I mean, he's at the point where he, everyone knows he's a fraud, and everyone knows all the stuff he's going to posit is ridiculous. I mean, most people probably just showed up because they wanted to see the sign that said, "Is Elizabeth Warren a cougar?" Like, just absurd. I find that. So, I want to compare him in the last little bit of time we have here. Do you remember James O'Keefe, the Project Veritas guy?
Yeah.
That guy can only exist if the shit he comes up with gets published and distributed without any kind of questioning on places like Fox News, without a commensurate level of scrutiny from anyone that's not ideologically hardline right wing. And I think the reason why their videos and shit have failed, I mean, for one, the government were cowards about the whole Acorn thing, and I think her name was Shirley Sherrod. They fired her. It was absurd. Like they basically caved to those fucksticks and then basically let them think, okay, we can do this again. But everything they do is dumb and absurd and obviously in bad faith, and people recognize it. They're also, just like Jacob Wool, similarly incompetent. Famously, they were trying to prank a New Yorker writer into giving some dumb quote that they were going to use like a gotcha about I don't know what, like something to do with real estate or something, but they forgot to hang up the phone when leaving this person a voicemail, and then left like 9 minutes of voicemail of them just like talking about, wow, this is going to be so illegal when we lie to this person to get them to say some wrong shit, and then we make a video. Like, they're really incompetent. And I think in a way, Jacob Wool's grift and the dumb shit he kind of gins up would probably be able to get more traction in right-wing blogosphere conspiracy theory stuff if it were still like the early 2000s. But I think that the information ecosystem, to sound like a TED Talk asshole for a moment, has changed in such a way that these kinds of things just we're able to provide a lot more immediate scrutiny. And I also think that some of the things that they got away with, they were able to generate, like think about the Swift Vote Veterans for Truth kind of stuff. That could be done, but would be a lot harder now, because the idea that you don't have to depend on Dan Rather to be the one person who's going to be like, oh, let's be critical about this stuff. You don't have to depend on like a massive media conglomerate owned by people who host fundraisers for fucking Trump to be the ones to debunk shit anymore. Like, I'm not saying the modern media landscape is great, but it does provide for a lot more immediate scrutiny from people who aren't as incredibly compromised as like big network media is in America. And so in that regard, I feel like Jacob Wool would probably have been successful if he were older, if he were like O'Keefe's age. But O'Keefe is failing now in the same environment because that dumb gotcha grift that they do, it falls apart upon contact with any kind of scrutiny. And that's the thing I think like Wool just hasn't figured out yet. I mean, he could just set up a private Snap and post himbo pics, and folks would probably give him money. But instead, he's constantly doing the shit and just getting humiliated and just stepping on rakes nonstop, and then he's going to go to jail. So, I mean...
But he's not. He's never going to be like properly have any proper consequences. He's never going to like even if he does go to jail, it's going to be you're not going to go to like dangerous jail. Which
because I mean like O'Keefe caught a charge and was actually convicted for like basically they were plotting a break-in of a representative's office. Or they may have actually broken in. I can't remember the facts of the case, but he actually caught a charge for it, and he wound up getting probation. And he went and did one of his dumb fucking things, and I think he got caught doing one of his stupid gotcha videos, and rightfully, people pointed out, like, hey man, you're not in the state you're supposed to stay in right now. You've legitimately violated the terms of your probation. And he wound up getting, I don't know if he caught extra stuff for it because he's a white dude with money, but it's one of those things where that kind of stuff, that kind of scrutiny, it's much harder for them to get away with than it was in 2010 or certainly 2006 or 2003. You know what I mean?
That was also Duncan Hunter who did the look how easy it is for me to just hop over the border. Yeah, and everybody's like, cool, you just violated your parole on Facebook Live, dude. What do you? It's like, oh, I didn't actually step over the border. It's like, so what do you? What's your point here, man? What did you actually
do then? Why don't you just go back and vape and play some video games, dude? Like that's what you're good at, vaping and gaming. All right, you are the king of the Joes. Just admit it and be good at it. Folks love it. They just don't like the racism and the weird tax fraud. But Francis, we have a bonus episode, and I wanted to preview the bonus episode, but I wanted to do this a little differently than we normally do because I feel like there's two very important points. For one, this episode features Maureen Todd giving us a reading of an article that you've probably seen on your Facebook if you're a veteran, because angry veterans that you know have shared it at one point. It's called A Letter to the Angry Leftists from a Young Infantryman. It's really dumb, and Maureen Todd read it for us because he's a very kind man. However, the episode is not just a Maureen Todd recitation, it's also a discussion about externalizing your anger and your frustration from military service into this online veteran outrage that has no real start and end point. So what I want to do is first play a couple of minutes of our good friend Maureen Todd, because he's always an interesting guy to hear from. I see you there in Portland, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in bumfuck directional school liberal arts college. You're having your temper tantrums because ever since mommy dropped you off at daycare 20 years ago, you've been throwing them to get your way. Now you're super pissed about the results of a presidential election where the other guy, and the only guy in the race for that matter, won.
Ooh, all right. I'm not here.
I can keep going. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead. That was a short one. I'll let you go. I'll let your Maureen Todd continue.
I'm not here to talk politics or explain the electoral college or to tell you what hypocritical douchebags are doing for the things you're doing. No, I have a much simpler conversation to have with you. See, I read what you post on Twitter, Facebook, your various internet blogs. I see you on the news breaking things, setting fires, and assaulting people of the opposite political belief. I see you there with your fat, ugly, unshaven feminist women in black power slogans screaming race baiters, throwing rocks and bottles at the lines of police officers trying to keep order in your own cities. I know your rhetoric. I know all your identity politics stems from Marxist activists and intellectuals who have pushed the American left farther left than ever before. I know you believe your progressive views are the supreme moral authority on every single issue, and somehow this perception allows you to justify your totalitarian social views and hypocritical violent outbursts. You profess to hate this country for their alleged bigotry while carrying signs that say, "Love wins." I also know you're a coward.
Yes, and which has been bolded in a strange yellow for some reason, font color. I know this because you keep screaming and blogging and protesting and even rioting, but you won't start this uprising to keep going on and on about. If you really believe that your cause is just, that the majority supports you, and the United States needs to be overthrown to make way for progressive social utopia, sunshine, and free shit, pick up that gun and start your revolution like every other communist group in history. See, I come from an organization that spent the better part of the last century trying to fight a bunch of little commie heathens. I have a pretty healthy respect for any Ivan who is willing to pick up an AK-47 and parachute onto the continent ready to overthrow the USA. That takes guts. You're not like him, though. You're quite different, actually. Ivan was in shape. You're a bunch of fat acceptance advocates who complain airline seats are too small for your 9,000 calorie per day diet. Ivan was a proud, masculine man. You have to drag queens and fat feminist women with green hair. Oh, you have drag queens and fat feminists with green hair. Ivan grew up mining coal and hunting wolves in the Urals. You want socialism because you're upset that you can't get a six-figure job at the age of 24 with the bullshit arts degree that you spent all that loan money on, and you haven't done a day's of physical labor in your life. Ivan was a veteran of Stalingrad, Afghanistan, and a dozen Bush wars. You think Call of Duty is too violent and sexist? Ivan packed an AK-47 and knew how to use it. Those among you leftists now who even have weapons, ditch them after you rob a liquor store or 7-Eleven and go hide out your aunt's Section 8 housing. You don't even have discipline Ivan did. At least he used the sights. Ivan killed jihadists by the thousands. You make excuses for him and want to invite him into our country.
Wow, there's a lot of dog whistles. It's weird. All the dogs in my neighborhood have suddenly just become howling. Like I don't get it. Like
And
it's like when the dogs discovered religion. You know, it's mad.
some very curious thoughts on the Soviet Union too, which we'll dive into.
Yeah, I'm interested because it's weird that I didn't realize that Ivan, who this guy fought at Stalingrad and Afghanistan, which were 40 years apart.
Which
I mean.
Which, interestingly enough, though, when Ivan was fighting in Afghanistan, we were fighting Ivan. But you know what? Let's go.
Also, Section 8 housing. So you hate poor people who are on housing benefit, which seems to me robbing liquor store or 7-Eleven and then go to Section 8 housing. It seems like this was meant to be an anti-Black Lives Matter racist post, but then he had to make it kind of veteran themed too. Also, fat people. Nate, he's mad at fat acceptance.
He said that this wasn't a political post.
Oh yeah, it's not a political post. Oh yeah. Anyway, Marine Todd wants to jump back in. So here, I'm gonna let's get him back on the line. Okay. However, there is some serious discussion in this episode, and so I want you to maybe take a listen to this as well, because this gives you a better idea of what you'll get if you get on the Patreon and become a subscriber and get this bonus episode in full. I guess the reason why I'm looking at this, I'm not saying fuck. I'm like, okay, fuck fascists and fuck like the Ivdentity Evropa fucking nerds who want to like organize some kind of weird like vaporwave Nazi army. That shit's stupid and fuck them. Like they absolutely should be. They should feel unsafe anywhere they go in public. But I also think that people who think like this stupid piece, I don't want to go so far as to say these people are 100% gone. Because I've met people who thought this and shared stuff like this once and have changed their minds, who have updated their conception of the world. And also, because I used to get mad about shit like this too, and I don't anymore. And I don't have that visceral reaction. Like with Bergdahl stuff, I don't freak out about it. I don't lose sleep over it. With stuff about the war, like protesters or stuff, or Antifa or whatever, like obviously I support Antifa, like Antifa are cool as hell. But all that stuff, like it used to make me mad and it doesn't anymore. It's possible to get beyond it, but I'd be lying if I said, oh, I never got mad. I was always above it all. Of course I got fucking mad.
Yep. And, we're always improving, Nate. One other thing that I want to point out from this Girls from Gunslinger thing is that the thing that they're using for their money for this, if you want to get the artistic titties, Patreon here, they have forged, based on your input, we forged a partnership with military and first responder focused law firms that has attorneys in every state as well as internationally, so that our fans who have issues that can only be remedied in the court system, such as complex divorce, custody, and visitation, have the financial aid they need to get into or back into the fight.
Oh my God. Are you telling me
and
that
also,
they use...
Also, they also specifically say this is a hand up, not a hand out for those who need it. So, yes.
So what you're basically saying is that these people use veteran outrage fucking spoken word poetry pieces to sell shitty t-shirts and to sell nudes on Patreon so they can fund family court for divorced dads.
Absolutely. It's phenomenal. I want to meet the women that they've convinced with this. I want to meet those. Like, so you're getting them out online artistically, I will say, because sure there is a difference between artistically draping yourself across the barrel of a tank and outright humping it, but what do you like? Are women like at all helped by what you're doing here? And maybe it is. You know what? I don't want to make any judgments. But based on what I'm reading here, this is a men's right advocacy group. Which, you know what? If that's what you want to do, gals, that's fine. I support you. You know why? Because I am a fucking feminist, and I think that you're strong, and you can do whatever you want with your bodies.
Yeah, I mean, I don't give a shit about the women taking the pictures in the sense. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to dismiss them so much as like I don't fault anybody for making money. If they can make money off this, and basically it's not abusive and it's not exploitative, and it's like they know what they're getting themselves into, then cool. Like that's fine. We make money our way. You make money your way. I have zero. I mean, I am absolutely pro sex workers' rights, and I think all sex work should be legalized as long as it's people over the age of consent and it's consensual. And so I don't have a problem with that at all. I do find it very weird that they've basically kind of turned this around and used it in they're selling patriotic nudes to help divorced dads who want to win custody cases. all under the umbrella of it being like a face smasher, fucking veteran outrage kind of thing.
Yeah, everything about their t-shirts makes me think that the men who wear this are violent men. They are men of violence, and they are violent men, because it's a lot of, I'm here, send me. It's a lot of, the whole I'm comfortable with violence kind of thing. And like, look, if you want to know what a person who does domestic abuse looks like, it's probably a cop or a soldier. I'm just going to put that out. And I'm saying 100%. This statistically, it's probably going to be a cop or a soldier. All right, everybody. So thank you. Remember, we do have the store that's open. If you go to hellofawaytodie.com/shop, or if you just go to the main page where we normally post our blogs and everything, there's a link to that. We have patches. I have medic patches. We finally found people who will let us print Motrin. We had problems with Teesprings. They're like, well, Motrin is technically a brand, and we can't do that. So I had to change it to Change Socks and Drink Water, which is not as funny. But fuck it. My patch dealer doesn't give a fuck about that stuff, or they just don't know yet. So once those get printed, those will be up in the store. I'm getting about 200 of them. Those will be ready to ship out to all of you. There will be Velcro patches. If you want to get in on any of our bonus stuff, as Nate said, patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. $5 gets you access to everything. $10 gets you a quarterly zine. If you wish to write for the zine, please contact me. You can either get with me on Twitter at ArmyStrang, or you can email us at sergeantjoker@hellofawaytodie.com. It's going to be about work, and I'm going to, one of my goals this week is to work on what am I thinking? A page on our website. I'm trying to do more with our website, so I'm gonna, like, somebody said, oh, I work for a writers group, and I didn't see anything about submissions or guidelines or anything. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Somebody should do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. If I'm gonna go ahead and have the zine, I guess, make it somewhat official. Even though it's still a zine that I'm having, Xeroxed and mailed out to you. So, even if you can't support us financially, any support that you can give us, telling your friends, telling your family, shooting them a link to the shop in case they want to buy stuff, or just giving us a thumbs up, or 5 stars on iTunes. All that stuff is great and wonderful. Subscribing to our YouTube channel. Just whatever little bits you can do are very, very much appreciated. So again, thank you all, and we will talk to you next week.